Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Game Week 18. We've got another quick turnaround and it's going to be a very hectic Christmas schedule, and all the content you need for Game Week 18 and beyond will be covered on this channel. Keep your eyes peeled for the best wildcard team, and if you've still got the first wildcard available, make sure to use it before Game Week 20, otherwise it does get burned and your second wildcard becomes available from Game Week 20 onwards. And there's also going to be my team selection with only one free transfer, but I'm again prepared to take a -4 or -8 hit. But the focus in this video will be the transfer tips with 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. And you can see the most transferred in players at this point of the game week on screen. Isak is getting a lot of investment, and rightfully so. I've been discussing him heavily in the last couple of weeks. Jesus, Rodgers, Aina and Diaz make up the top 5. And towards the end of this podcast, I'll show you the most transferred out players at the time of this recording, which is Monday, the 23rd of December, in the very early hours of the morning. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 31,000 subscribers. We're very close towards that milestone, and we're going to also aim for many other objectives across all social media platforms. Check the links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, the Discord server, FPL League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify, and you can easily find me by tapping FPL Dylan or Dylan RCM. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first purchase I'm going to recommend is Ismaila Sarr, who has 24 points in the last 2 game weeks, including 17 against Brighton with a brace and an assist, and he followed that up with a goal against Arsenal in a 5-1 loss. But I think Crystal Palace were very unfortunate. It's just the Gunners were very clinical on the day, and Palace certainly deserved to score more goals from that match, and they were denied by spectacular David Raya on the day. But Crystal Palace's long-term fixtures are quite appealing, and if you are looking for a Saka replacement or just any budget midfielder with very low ownership, I think Ismaila Sarr could be a great differential, and I'd rather invest in him than Mateta or Eze at this moment in time. And Eze did miss the Arsenal game due to injury, but he should be back fairly soon and he should be considered. I still think he's the talisman, so to speak, and any goal or assist by Eze will result in bonus points. And Mateta was a real handful for Arsenal. He scored in the Carabao Cup to give them the lead in that game momentarily, and he also caused Saliba and Gabriel all sorts of problems, and Saliba had a shocking game at Selhurst Park. But Ismaila Sarr is probably my favourite Crystal Palace attacker, and there's also a certain defender I'm going to recommend from now on, and I did discuss him in a recent video, but more on that later. Sarr has 4 goals and 3 assists so far this season, with the bulk of them coming in the last 2 game weeks. An XGI figure of 6.42, which is very sustainable and healthy, and 61 FPL points, and most of the stats are actually quite encouraging. He has 28 shots overall, an XG figure of 3.87, 9 big chances and 7 big chance created. So I think Ismaila Sarr is a very good differential in the midfield. Next up is James Maddison, which might be controversial because he was subbed off before 60 minutes and he's not a nailed-on starter. He might be Spurs' best creator and one of their best attackers. He's going to get goals and assists consistently, but there will be occasions where he's going to be on the bench or be subbed off early, as we saw against Liverpool. But I think the main reason for that was to put Kulusevski down the middle, and I think Kulusevski has been by far Spurs' best player this season. But FPL-wise, I think Maddison is the go-to asset in the midfield. He's got 8 goals and 5 assists so far this season, and while Son will score more goals, he also costs significantly more. So I think Maddison offers the best value in that Spurs attack right now. Brennan Johnson was also in explosive form very recently, but he's kind of in and out of the team from time to time, and Maddison could be another one. If we see Kulusevski shifted to the middle, Brennan Johnson will go to the right, Son on the left, and then Solanke up front. I think Spurs have so many different options in the attack. I wouldn't be considering their defenders whatsoever, and they'll share the goals around. But Maddison is my favourite Spurs attacker right now, and he could be one of the best Saka replacements, excluding the obvious Salah and Palmer from that equation. And the likes of Jota, Foden, Bruno Fernandes, and all these very popular assets over the coming weeks have been covered in my recent Transfers videos and also across all my content in terms of best wildcard teams and team selections. But Maddison has very healthy underlying stats. His XGI is 6.63, which is very similar to Ismaila Sarr. 97 FPL points. The fixtures are quite mixed bag, but even Arsenal away coming up, Maddison got 2 assists at the Emirates last time out, both for Heung-min Son. So I think Maddison can perform in these big matches. It's just a question of will he start every single game, and that's the only concern I would have about James Maddison. His minutes aren't going to be the most secure, but he's had 10 big chances this season, 26 key passes, and he's very clinical compared to the number of chances he has. He does finish quite a lot of them, and he creates a lot of different opportunities for his teammates. Although this season, I think the creativity stats are down compared to at this point of the season last year. But I think James Maddison will be a decent purchase. He's got quite low ownership, and in terms of Spurs attackers, he might be the very best one in FPL. In a recent Transfers video, I suggested skipping Daniel Munoz at the time, but to add him to the watch list. He got booked against Brighton and missed the Arsenal game as a result, and he was also suspended for the Carabao Cup quarter-final against the Gunners. So the Colombian does get a lot of suspensions, even in the Copa America, for example. He did pick up a red card in the semi-final and then missed the big final against Argentina. So that is one major problem with Daniel Munoz, but he's got the attacking potential with 2 goals and 2 assists this season, and the underlying stats are staggering for a wing-back. 7 big chances, an XG figure of 2.8, and 16 shots inside the box. These are crazy numbers, and the creativity is still fairly decent with 16 chances created. So I think Daniel Munoz could be one of the most exciting wing-backs to purchase right now, especially at his price and below. And this might be a hot take, but I'd rather buy Munoz than Lewis Hall at this moment in time because Newcastle's next 3 fixtures are quite tough on paper from a defensive perspective, and Munoz can keep some clean sheets because if you look beyond the next 4, Crystal Palace are right up there in the fixture difficulty rating. He's by far my favourite way of covering the Eagles defensively, although Dean Henderson in goal is certainly decent. Ismaila Sarr and maybe Eze Mateta are worth investment in the attack, but Munoz might be the very best option that Crystal Palace have to offer. I'm still surprised by how much Erling Haaland has fallen off in the last couple of weeks, and Man City have 1 victory out of the last 12 matches. With Bukayo Saka out injured, it does make it easier to have Palmer, Salah and Haaland in the same team, whilst also having a balanced 15-man squad, but it's still very difficult. I wouldn't be looking to buy Erling Haaland right now, but for those that still own him, I would be keeping him for the next 3 game weeks and then reassessing, but he costs way too much money. He went down in price overnight to 14.8 million. His ownership has halved since the last time I discussed him in a Transfers video back in game week 10 or 11, and I sold him around that time, and I haven't looked back. I've been getting green arrow after green arrow because I'm not dependent on one man to kind of save my team, and Erling Haaland hasn't been delivering for quite some time now. He still has 13 goals though, so only Mohamed Salah has more goals in the Premier League so far this season. He's got an assist which came against Nottingham Forest very recently. His XG is 13.1 and all the stats are going to be incredible for Haaland. He's got 64 shots inside the box, 24 big chances, but he is missing a lot of them, especially in recent weeks. I think he's worth holding on to, but I wouldn't be looking to invest in Erling Haaland. One of the worst signings I've made this season is Joao Pedro, but which time? In Game Week 4 I bought him, then he got injured during the international break and basically didn't play any minutes for me. And I bought him recently and he's only got 1 assist in 5 game weeks. But let's also temper expectations. He is a 5.9 million forward. I think the main issue is you've got other alternatives like Delap, for example, who was suspended in Game Week 17. He's been doing fairly decent. You've had Jimenez chipping along despite the recent benching against Southampton. Jamie Vardy can sometimes be very, very consistent. And you've also got Strand Larsen, Cunha and Chris Wood. Those last 2 especially, they are more expensive, but they are just making a mockery of their price tag, while Joao Pedro seems to get returns when you least expect it. He gets a goal and an assist against Man City off the bench upon his return. He gets a goal against Arsenal at the Emirates. He scores the winner against Man United and gets double-digit hauls. But when you start him against Southampton and all these plum fixtures, he just fails to deliver. I think he could actually do really well in some of these tough games coming up, including Aston Villa away and Arsenal at home. And I think he's still worth holding on to in many cases. But if you can't get to Isak or Jackson without selling Joao Pedro, then just sell the Brazilian because that's a very obvious upgrade. The same goes for Chris Wood. I think he is a better FPL option than Joao Pedro, who offer more consistency despite his recent blanks. But apart from that, I don't see many forwards that I kind of rush in towards. Even Matheus Cunha, he could be banned at any moment and he's been one of my favourite purchases of the entire season. But Wolves' fixtures are also very tough. Maybe he's another one to consider if you want to take a really big risk on that Brazilian. But apart from those forwards I just mentioned, I think just keep Joao Pedro for now and focus your efforts on Saka replacements or other areas of your team, especially if you've got fires to put out with injury, suspensions or other factors. Now don't get me wrong, Joao Pedro hasn't been good enough even at his price tag. He's got 4 goals and 3 assists this season and he hasn't played that many minutes overall because of injuries, but the recent performances haven't been good enough. And I think his best football comes as the attacking midfielder or second striker. When he plays up front by his own without Danny Welbeck or Ferguson, I don't think Joao Pedro is really that guy to lead the line for Brighton in that way. But he's a good player. He can play anywhere across the attack. And I think it's worth holding the Brazilian. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I think this is a contentious one, and I certainly wouldn't blame you if you offloaded him. He hasn't been good enough in recent weeks, but I think the returns will come very soon. Back in Game Week 1, I had Lewis Hall, and I was very bullish on him throughout the summer as a differential, and he has come good eventually. We have seen in the last 2 Game Weeks what he's capable of, but I still don't think it's the right time to invest in him. If I'm making a wildcard team, I might still include him as the 4th or 5th defender to bench him in the next 3 Game Weeks and then start him from Game Week 21 onwards, but I just don't think it's the right time to purchase. So if you have Lewis Hall, definitely hold on to him, but I just wouldn't be looking to buy at this moment in time. He's got 3 assists for the season, no goals, but that's certainly fine for a 4.6 million defender. His ownership is only increasing and it's currently at 12%. 24 key passes is very encouraging for a budget defender, and he's got 59 FPL points right now. Apart from that, 4 big chance create is decent, but you're not going to get many goals from him. He's only had 5 shots all season and none of them have been on target. I just don't see Newcastle keeping a clean sheet over the next 3 game weeks, but they have been very impressive recently, and they've got 6 victories out of the last 10 games across all competitions, and Isak is definitely worth investment even at this point of the season, but I'd be less keen on the defenders despite the recent clean sheets, and Dubravka has done very well in Nick Pope's absence, but I just think Lewis Hall is a hold. We covered Bukayo Saka's injury in the reaction stream on Saturday night, and it looks like he's going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks, and that was kind of the minimum timeline suggested by many physios and different reports and rumours circulating on Twitter. And the Times actually posted an update on Sunday night, and they said the following: Bukayo Saka is likely to be sidelined for several weeks with an injury to his right hamstring, and that will be the best case scenario for Arsenal. Hopefully he's back very soon. I think Arsenal are going to really struggle in some of these games without him. Maybe Martinelli on the right wing, as we saw against Palace, could be a temporary solution, but you can't replace Saka's creativity. 19 big chance create, which is the most of any player across Europe's top 5 leagues. All the stats are sensational, and he's one of my favourite players and assets in the game. But my recent timings in terms of buying Isak, selling Isak, and then buying Saka have been completely off. I've probably lost 40, 50 points with those transfers in and out. I've covered that before on Twitter, in my reaction stream, and I don't want to delve into that too much more. But Saka is definitely going to be worth investment once he's available again, and maybe hold on to him for more definitive updates, because there is still a little glimmer of hope, but I have to say that's very slim. The most likely scenario is that he's going to miss the next 4 game weeks against Ipswich, Brentford, Brighton, and maybe even Tottenham, although there is still a chance Saka is available for that clash in the North London derby in Game Week 21. But with a player at that price, 10.5 million, missing 3, 4, 5 game weeks, it's definitely going to be worth selling. Who do you replace him with? That's going to be the big question. I think Foden could be a very big punt. He has been decent in the last 2 games, but he hasn't been good enough in FPL over the course of the season. Diogo Jota will be an explosive differential. He has an incredible record against Leicester, but the problem with him is the minutes. You've got Gakpo and Diaz there, and also with Jota, he is an injury-prone player, so there's no guarantee he's going to stay fit for a prolonged period of time. You might go for Kevin De Bruyne, but his minutes are also going to be a big concern. He didn't even come off the bench against Aston Villa over the weekend. Heung-min Son might be the kind of go-to preference for a lot of people if you want to maintain the structure and make it easy to go back to Saka, but otherwise I'd be looking at Mbeumo, Diogo Jota, as I just mentioned, Bruno Fernandes, Amad Diallo, Rodgers, maybe Ismaila Sarr could also enter that equation, and you've also got the other Spurs midfielders like Kulusevski, and my preference would be James Maddison at this moment in time. Once Saka is available, I'd recommend buying him, but it looks like he's going to be a sell and miss the next couple of weeks for the Gunners. Several weeks ago, I discussed holding Ollie Watkins, and he got a goal and an assist in the following match, but afterwards he got injuries, he's been benched, he's been subbed off early, and it looks like Duran is currently the first choice striker for Aston Villa. Now, I think Ollie Watkins will become the number 9 once again, the main man up front, but they're going to share minutes all season, Duran and Watkins, and I want to completely avoid that situation. Watkins to Isak or Jackson is one of the easiest transfers you can make, and my preference up front is to have both of those strikers in your team because they offer that consistency, they've got the fixtures, and they've been so consistent over the course of the season. And Ollie Watkins had some good periods, and he's still going to get a lot of goals and assists from now until the end of the campaign, but he's just not worth that price tag right now. Is he even going to start against Newcastle away? At the moment, I'd say no, but I do think he'll get a start or two over the next 4 game weeks, and Duran and Watkins will share minutes over the course of the season. So I'd rather avoid that, and I think Ollie Watkins is a very easy sell. I wouldn't invest in their defenders either, with Luca Dean, Konsa, or Martinez in goal until we see an improvement defensively. My favourite Aston Villa asset by far is Morgan Rogers, and I've said that for many months now, and I'm looking to invest in him again because I did sell him a couple of weeks ago, and that's a slight regret of mine. He did very well against Man City with a 14-pointer, but I wouldn't buy Morgan Rogers against Newcastle away. My prediction right now is that he will blank, and last season Newcastle battered Aston Villa not just once, but twice, as Guardiola said. I think Watkins could become an option at some point in this campaign, but right now, he's a very easy sell. The last sell of this video will be Mitoma, and don't worry, there's still a skip section to go, but I was never that keen on Mitoma, only as a short-term punt because Brighton had great fixtures and he was showing some decent form. He is one of the best wingers in the Premier League, a fantastic dribbler and player to watch, but in terms of goals and assists, he's not the most reliable player when it comes to FPL, and you look at the next 4 game weeks, I mean, it's quite clear that Brighton have a poor fixture swing from game week 19 onwards. Now you might ask me, why is Joao Pedro a hold and Mitoma is a sell? Now, as I said before, you can still sell Joao Pedro in certain scenarios, but when I look at the options up front, they're not as appealing compared to the midfield where you've got so many choices like I just mentioned with Ismaila Sarr, the Spurs midfielders. You can also go for Palmer, Salah, then you've got Foden, Bruno Fernandes, Amad Diallo, Rodgers. I could keep on going on, but in the front line, maybe a short-term punt on Gabriel Jesus if he continues this form. You've got Chris Wood, Isak Jackson, and that's about it really. You could argue there's a few others like Matheus Cunha, but you wouldn't really buy him at this point in time. But with Mitoma, I'd be looking to sell if possible. You don't need to do it just yet because Brentford at home is a great fixture, but Mitoma can be upgraded on with one of those midfielders discussed in this video or across my recent live streams and FPL piece of content over the last couple of weeks. So I think Mitoma is probably going to be worth selling. I don't see him getting many goals or assists from now until the end of the season. The underlying stats, though, are actually very encouraging, so I could be wrong about this pick. He's got 32 shots overall, with 27 of them being inside the box. His XGI is over 6, which is very decent. It's rivaling the likes of Ismaila Sarr and James Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, etc. 10 big chances for the Japanese international and 25 key passes, but in terms of Brighton attackers, Danny Welbeck when he's fit and Joao Pedro would remain my favourite options, and in general, I'd probably avoid investing in the Seagulls right now. They're a very inconsistent team. I think their record over the last 180 games or so in the Premier League is like 60 wins, 60 draws and 60 losses. You don't know what you're going to get from them from week to week, and they aren't the most reliable of teams, and I'd probably avoid them at this moment in time. You might be absolutely fuming, especially if you're a Christian or you celebrate Christmas. How do you skip Gabriel Jesus when Christmas is coming? Well, look, he's been in amazing form. He scored a hat-trick against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup, and once that first goal went in the second half, he looked like a man possessed. He completely transformed. The flicks, the touches, the close control, the link-up play, just everything about Gabriel Jesus that we saw when he first joined Arsenal, we started seeing that again. And I think his performance against Crystal Palace in the league was arguably even better because it was sustained over 90 minutes, and beyond the goals, just everything he did was even better than what he did at the Emirates a couple of days ago. But let's not forget that before that first goal went in, it was over a year since Gabriel Jesus scored at the Emirates. So the 17th of December, 2023, he scored against Brighton. And then fast forward to the 18th of December in 2024, that was his next Emirates goal. And I think in the whole calendar year, he scored against Nottingham Forest away from home back in February. And that's about it. He's had a very tough time. And as he said, to be fair, a lot of those cameos and appearances were off the bench. So it's very difficult to build any rhythm or momentum, but he's certainly got it now. And if you are looking for a short-term punt, I think Gabriel Jesus could be a very good pick. But if I'm looking a bit longer term and bigger picture, I'd rather go for Isak, Jackson and Chris Wood. That's my favourite front three at this moment in time. And Gabriel Jesus, I just think he can be very inconsistent, and in front of goal, he can frustrate you. He was so close to getting another hat-trick at Selhurst Park. He hit the crossbar and then Havertz tucked in from a rebound, and Jesus got the assist in FPL, and he also had another chance later in the game. But look, if he continues this form, he could certainly be worth investment, especially in the absence of Bukayo Saka. All these attackers for Arsenal need to step up in his absence, and I think Gabriel Jesus could be the main man up front for the next couple of weeks. And if I am looking at Arsenal replacements in that position in the forward line or midfield, I'd probably rank it Gabriel Jesus first right now and Kai Havertz second. Maybe Martinelli and Odegaard will be just behind them. But I just think Jesus can be a very frustrating figure and you need to be very careful with him. But if you are looking for a short-term punt, Gabriel Jesus could be incredible, especially in fixtures such as Ipswich Town. The 11th and final player is another forward in Duran. He could be another short-term punt that works very well for you, and his goal to minutes ratio is amongst the very best in the Premier League. The fact he's actually matched Ollie Watkins' 7 goals in this division is actually very encouraging, but a lot of these appearances are off the bench. When he does start, he gets subbed off around 60-70 minutes, depending on game state. And in certain games, maybe Aston Villa will throw the kitchen sink and have both Duran and Watkins starting together, but that also disrupts the balance and maybe they won't work as well as they would with just one lone striker. There's a lot of different variables and ifs, buts and maybes. I'd rather avoid the hassle and the headache and just go for a more nailed-on starter. Even Gabriel Jesus, I'd rather go for him than Duran at this moment in time. And Aston Villa's fixtures are quite mixed bag, especially over the next 4 game weeks. Of course, FPL have changed the FDR in recent weeks, the fixture difficulty rating. So before Everton away would have been classed as green, well now it has been reallocated to grey, so it's more of a medium difficulty fixture. But look, Duran can score in any single one of these games coming up. That's certainly possible, even if it's off the bench or starting the game. Duran always has an impact, but I'd rather avoid the kind of minutes risk. Is he going to start or not? No, thank you. I don't want to have that, especially over Christmas where you've got games every 3 or 4 days. And then it does ease up in January, of course, but I think Duran and Watkins will kind of take minutes and starts off each other, not just in the Prem, but also in the Champions League. And I think it's probably best to avoid all of them. And the only attacker I'd really invest in from Aston Villa is Morgan Rogers, who is one of the best budget midfielders in the game. That wraps up another Transfer Tips podcast, this time out of Gameweek 18. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Are there any other players you'd like to be mentioned or covered? Just bear in mind, some of them might have been talked about in recent Transfer Tips podcasts, and I want to shape things up and also keep things fresh and cover different players and differentials. So that's why certain players, maybe like Diogo Jota, who was covered last week, hasn't been talked about that much or highlighted with the stats, but I have mentioned him, to be fair, a few times, and I think he could be one of the best Bukayo Saka replacements. And there's going to be even more injury updates, suspensions, team news over the coming days, and that will be covered in my upcoming videos, like the best wildcard team and my team selection. And keep your eyes peeled for the Boxing Day deadline stream on Thursday. And you can also check out all my other UCL fantasy and FPL content by smashing the like button of this video, getting it to over 200 likes, and subscribing to my channel. We're very close towards 31,000 subscribers, and we did hit 30k recently, so thank you very much for all your support throughout the year. All the subscriptions, likes, comments, super chats, all the patrons and channel members, you're very much appreciated. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, which is patreon.com/DylanRCM, and clicking the join button on YouTube to become a channel member so you can gain early access to my videos amongst many other perks. And you can also join the Discord server, FPL League, check out Draft Time, which is a great resource, and also my Spotify. Leave a 5-star review if you've got the time, if you're on your phone or tablet. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. And I'll see you very soon for more FPL and News Fantasy videos. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.